Hello world, Patricia O'Connor here and Frida Reba Darcy. Today on the Bonsai balcony, we have a couple of things going on. Today is going to be a little bit on updates, and then I'm going to go to a topic. And as per usual, my topics are timely, or at least as they kind of pertain to what's going on here. Today is a beautiful, beautiful warm spring day on our balcony, and it is quite warm in Alameda. Feels like it's almost 70, but it's also breezy. It is very breezy. I hear breezy for us means breezy, kind of what you see there. Other parts of California, they are experiencing some high wind. So watch out, you guys. Keep your heads down for a minute. Make sure all your trees are tied down, and yeah, all that good stuff. Meanwhile, here in Alameda, we've got these constant little 15-mile-an-hour things come through, and that's not going to cause us any limb damage. Although was dodging pine cones earlier. We have some pine trees here that have some hellaciously huge pine cones. Like the base of them are like softball size. One of those guys comes, if it starts chunking one of those guys at you, you'll know it. So other than that, but as far as our trees are concerned, the wind is not going to hurt them in that way. What the wind can do is dry them out. It can cause their needles to vape off, turn water into oxygen more and more readily. It can cause the substrate to dry on a sunny, windy day. We have to be especially careful of things getting too dry too early. Bearing in mind also that we've been kind of used to taking it easy and watching our trees not, drink up water too much. And now all of a sudden that's kind of switched. They have switched on. Their water intake is increasing as their bud production goes up and their root production goes up, and as the sun comes up and the temperatures increase. So with all of that going on, we need to make, from here on at least where we are here in Alameda, it's a good time to make sure we're staying properly hydrated. Everybody got a good watering yesterday. Some guys got 2 waterings yesterday. We're starting to lean on our substrate in our trays, and also that stuff is starting to evaporate off in between days to day, so it's less likely to look like a soggy mess. Our little tray of trees that we did last year are all starting to grow like weeds. They themselves are growing like weeds, and good to see. Now here's something worthy of news. I believe I see blooms. I believe that this Chinese sinensis has heard my complaints, and I think it's going to bloom for me. I'll keep you posted. So that's my Chinese wisteria. This is my Japanese wisteria, and we're still waiting on its blooms too, but they'll be here. They'll all be here shortly. Anyway, it's a nice day, and what we were talking about earlier about the wind, I have had an incident before where this little guy took some burns. Actually, it took burns right in here. And at the time, this guy was sitting right in here. And I believe that burn, at first when it happened, I attributed that burn to wind. A slight amount of wind. It wasn't enough to cause any kind of damage, but that was the only thing I could figure. But there was probably one other thing that I hadn't thought of. When the sun lines up with the pool, we get a direct kick off that guy. It's like a mirror pointed sometimes at the bottom side of these branches. The side that's not used to getting sun. The side of needles that's not used to getting sun is probably what burned on that. And it only occurred to me last year that that might be what happened several years before. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. But maybe you have a situation where you have a large body of water, and the glare or the kick off of that can definitely cause you to get light on your trees where they are not used to getting light. Also, I used to do things, pull tricks like that to try and say I was worried about whether or not my trees were getting enough light on the balcony. Before I put up my lights up here, I would notice on the rail what parts of the rail were in good light and what parts of the rail weren't. And I was always trying to figure out who looked like they needed more light and who looked like they were getting enough light. And I was always trying to scoot everything in those prime locations, which was always evolving as the season changes. And so I would just shuffle those trees around all year long, trying to make sure everybody's needs were met. And if they weakened over one thing or another, and there could have been a lot of things, because at this time I still had a lot to learn about feeding and pruning and basically everything. But add that to the mix was the concern that with all of this shuffling around, we might not be doing our trees any favors there. So to work that out better for us, we added our two 740 watt full spectrum grow lights. Okay, so that makes sure that everybody gets everything they need here, and that increases our space so that on the rail everybody's getting enough light, whether from the sun or from our lights. And on the back row, everybody's getting enough sun, if not from the lights, then from the sun that reaches in. But it only reaches in a little bit, and it reaches in farther as the light gets worse, and it reaches in less good whenever the light is more grow oriented, if that makes sense. Okay, so what I was going to say about is what things that I have never seen burn on this rail are my oaks. My oaks seem to be impervious to western sunset light. Again, I had discussed that last week. I had a tree that was a Yamadori that historically would love south-facing cliffs or overhangs. Would have been an environment where you would find it in the wild, and this one had been collected in the wild. And yet, when I let it hang off the balcony, because it was the kind of tree that could do that, it hung out and got that western sunset light, which was very much my point in its placement, was to let it pick up a little light. But what I hadn't learned is that light was so low in the sky that all of that light that was hitting those lower branches that I wanted to get good light was hitting them down here. Now we're talking about this is a leaf instead of needles, and we were talking about a ponderosa. But the answer to how it was that western light, that orange light low in the sky at sunset, burned my tree It's because it was hitting the needles in a place where they weren't used to being hit. So, yeah, if your branches are like this, and then you put some motion and change them to like this, then all of this is going to burn. If the sun or a mirror or a reflection, or you try to do like what people suggested to me when they saw me moving these lights around, people suggested that I put bounce board or mirror these walls and stuff. That could increase the amount of burn you get without really increasing the amount of total light you get. Also, whenever you do something like a mirror, that always reflects a hard shaft of light, when what is preferred would be if you could reflect a spectrum of very dissipated light. Don't think a shaft like water coming out of a hose. Think a sprinkler spraying out in all directions. That's preferable. And to that end, if you were going to do a bounce light, the good old white wall is a better reflector for plants in most cases than mylar or mirrors, for that very reason. The mirror is just going to bounce around a shaft that maybe bounces around and hits something in a few places, but not, and if you just dissipate it like a shower curtain, just dissipate it everywhere into a fog, then everybody gets some. A diminished amount, but everybody gets some. And for every bounce, everybody gets less. And for every foot, everybody gets less. But that's all things that you take into consideration when you try to go with extra lighting. So now what we've discussed is wind and how that can cause your trees to dry out more quickly, and how in the early spring, when we have more wind, also the trees will have just decided to wake up and pick up their intake. So that becomes important. And I've also kind of added to that a little situation that I occasionally have with kick coming off the ocean from the pool, possibly burning the underside of some of the foliage. That's kind of why these oaks are hanging out here like that in this spot. Things that have done well without ever getting burned have hung out here. While we're on that, I don't think I've quite worked this out yet. I'm super stoked about Sunday and picking up that Ponderosa. However, my little idea here about the vinyl has a drawback I didn't really think of. And that's the same thing that we've already been talking about. The amount of kick that the amount of reflection that gets kind of makes me think about, I have some paint. I have some texture paint, like what you would spray in the bed of a truck, or, like a bed liner. But that's black. If I do that, if I rubberize that with some black paint, then that's just going to soak up heat, a lot of it. And that's kind of wouldn't be good either. But I'm not so sure about this vinyl. I don't like the amount of reflection and the amount of kick. It actually can reflect back and kind of spike your pupils at times. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the same thing we're talking about. We don't want all that reflecting, that's not going to help the tree or help it to photosynthesize. That's going to burn the bottom side of the foliage that's not used to receiving light there. We are looking at so much budding out on these 3 cypress trees. They are just absolutely just flushing out, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how these 3 guys look when they're all going great guns. I'm pretty sure it's going to look pretty good. There you go. Meanwhile, the pollen is very thick. I'm really excited about those. I'm really excited about those blooming buds. And I see a lot of them. This is I know I'm ping-ponging around, but I'm really excited about that wisteria and all those blooms. I've had this thing for 4 years, and this will be the first year it bloomed. Also, this will be a little over a year, a little over a year since I started feeding it. So, no to the feeding it interfering with the blooming. Yes, the BioGold probably helped because that was no, might have been being another year older helped, or it might have been the BioGold. But all of our pines are looking very, very green. Ponderosa is looking really, really sharp. I'm thinking I need to probably bust loose all those wires. I can get to those easy enough. Meanwhile, there's the Ponderosa that we potted up a couple of weeks ago. I love that pot. I love that tree. And here's the one that we potted up yesterday. It's taken its rightful place here in our little potted up trees. And here's somebody was asking earlier about this literati. This guy came to me by way of a bonsai club auction. I used to belong to a bonsai club, and I took part in one of our auctions. I was pretty serious about being really active in it. I was very much looking forward to being active in the club. But one of the good things that did come from that was this literati Japanese black pine. And yeah, I love it. And it did have where you see, show them, Pat, where you see the apex there, it was going that way. It was a bar branch, but it didn't look like a bar branch because it was doing one of those. I exercised a little artistic. I hope the original owner didn't cringe when I did that, but I didn't. I was kind of unsure about how I felt about a bar branch once I noticed that it was a bar branch. Yeah. So let's see, 1, 2. That's 3 ponderosas and 3 Japanese black pines. 1, 2, 3. Everybody's just looking so good. We're gonna cut it here. Look at all the shoots. I had this oak tree. I had this California oak. We're looking at the back of it. I had noticed that this side was just flushing out with so many shoots. It was just, guns a-blazing. Coming in, all guns a-blazing. And the side that was facing me, the front, which is the side with the hollow feature, had an impressive amount, but nothing like what I'm looking at there. So I rotated that guy around and let some of that pool bounce light hit it too, to see how it would like that. And yeah, it's responding in like it loves all of this light and that light and all that other stuff. So we're seeing a resurgence on this California oak that just a result of pruning and feeding. And yeah, I'm really, this year is going to be the year that I leave everything alone all year and let it grow out. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to let everything grow out. So this is going to be the year I finally do that. Like and subscribe if you guys have not already. Our next drop will probably be a little bit later in the week. I'm really excited about what we have coming up. We have Saturday Night Live Bonsai coming up on Saturday night, and on Sunday I have a road trip that I've been looking forward to for a couple of weeks. Hey, by the way, I have got everything I need accumulated to do an air layer on this Trident maple. And I believe I'm waiting on foliage, but I'm sitting there and I'm catching up on my lessons and everything about Trident maples. And I'm seeing a lot of guys that do this whenever, like right now, like whenever, just before they start leafing out. So the only thing I had been waiting on was it to leaf out, and I'm starting to, as I've refreshed my lessons, I'm seeing about as many people do these when they leaf out. I'd like to know some of y'all's thoughts on that. I would rather the thing be flushed out and the leaves be hardened off. That way I know that I've got this energy going, and the last thing I want to do is do some surgery on a tree that doesn't have a lot of foliage on it, and then sit there and listen to the clock start ticking slower and slower and slower while we wait to see signs of life. I'm not a big fan of that unless that is just absolutely the way you're supposed to do it. So that's just kind of my shout out for a what do you think. Otherwise, I look forward to putting an air layer straight right across there, and then when that takes and produces roots all the way around that are all beautiful and everything, we'll get some sort of robin egg blue oval pot and plant that guy in that, and hopefully this will bust out. Although I've also thought about I could do some kind of thread graft on the base if it doesn't flush out. Anyway, like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Our next drop will probably be either Friday night or will be our Saturday drop. And I appreciate you. Frida appreciates you. And thank you so much for watching.